process very slow. So, in order to avoid that, a lot of corporations will hire officers, right? The officers are hired or appointed by the board of directors to handle day-to-day management, right? So instead of having all of the basic decisions on what a corporation should be doing day by day by day by day made in a meeting format with a board of directors, they can delegate some of their power and hand it off to other people. And of course, if you're a corporation like Bank of America, which is massive and has, probably, I don't know if it's probably billions of dollars of assets by now, you're going to hire the best, most capable, expert person who knows, who has a ton of experience in running a bank, has expertise, has, everything you would want in someone who's making important decisions for your company. Not just somebody who the shareholders like. You're going to check resumes, you're going to hire the most qualified person, and you're going to pay them a hefty salary, but you get to choose your expert. So, officers are widely used, especially in larger corporations. If you look at the bylaws of Best Buy, you'll see some of the officers they have listed there. And usually their name, you'll know an officer in a corporation by the alphabet soup that follows their name. So they're going to have titles like CEO, which is Chief Executive Officer, CFO, Chief Financial Officer, COO, Chief Operations Officer, CAO, Chief Accounting Officer, or Vice Presidents. There's got to be, so many Vice Presidents. A lot of times you'll see Vice President of this, Vice President of Marketing, Vice President of Accounting, Vice President of Finance, Vice President in charge of, consumer relations. All the little leaders who run their little fiefdoms within the corporation are possibly officers. There are always going to be sort of, departments, and whether or not someone's an officer or just an employee is another question that we're not going to get into. But when you see that power delegated over to a hired expert because the board of directors doesn't want to handle that, another classic example of this, that I like to throw out there is, think about it. If you're the board of directors and you need to hire a new, just somebody to work on the computers, to be an IT guy for your company, are you, as a board of directors, going to sit around and interview, 5, 6, 7 candidates and choose the best one? Or would you rather just hire a vice president in charge of human resources who has, experience in hiring and human resources and that sort of thing, and say, hire us the best IT person possible? You're probably going to go with choice B, because it's quick, it's easy, it's efficient, and it gets the job done in a way that is going to be done right, because you've hired somebody who's very capable of doing the hiring, and it's going to be done efficiently, rather than having the board sit around and meet just for the purpose of interviewing candidates. So officers can play a very important role. They take some of that management responsibility and duty away from the board of directors and help the corporation operate a little bit more efficiently and a little bit more quickly. Okay, here is where we have to take a bit of a detour, all right, to talk about financing the corporation. One of the unique qualities about a corporation is how it gets its capital, how it gets its money to operate. All right, when you think of some of the other business forms that we've talked about, they have their own way of getting their money, especially to start up their business. We know that with a sole proprietor, it's probably coming out of their own pocket, or the implication there being they're either going to have it to invest or they're going to borrow it on their own name, right? It's going to be their liability on the loan in case that loan defaults. Either way, it's coming out of their own pocket, of their own responsibility for coming up for their finance. If they take on an investor to invest in their company, they're not a sole proprietorship anymore, because now they have a partner. operating a for-profit business, right? So now there's two people doing it. By definition, that can't be a sole proprietor. So they're looking at themselves. The man in the mirror is the one who's coming up with their startup money. Partnership, we have what's called capital contributions. Partners bring that to the table when they start a partnership. They come to the partnership with money to put into the startup. And we talked about that. We talked about how that can be reimbursed to them after the partnership gets off the ground, or at the point that the partnership is finally winding up its business. Well, what about corporations now? Corporations get money to finance their business by selling shares of their stock, selling shares of ownership. This is unique in that it's done this way by design. Partnerships can do that as well. There's a way that you can have a new partner buy in. All right, sole proprietorships obviously can't do this, but other business forms can sell portions of the ownership to get some money. But corporations are designed to do this, designed so that it's done quickly, easy, it's simple, and there's no confusion at the corporate level on whether or not the corporate form has changed, or there's any complications legally with bringing in new owners. All right. This is an advantage because, number one, it provides that perpetual life that we talked about. If you can exchange ownership quickly and easy, if I can be an owner today and turn around and sell my stock tomorrow, and now the person I sold it to is an owner, and it can happen just that fast, that makes it easy for the corporation to continue perpetually, because one owner can only be an owner temporarily, and when they don't want to be an owner anymore, or when they die, those shares of stock are going to go to somebody else. They're either going to sell them, or they're going to devise them to their heirs or to whoever. So this is part of the reason why that's an advantage. It's another advantage because this is a great way to raise startup money for your corporation without having to give up huge portions of ownership in your company. If you're a partner and you have two other partners and each of you owns a third, but you need startup capital, it's going to be hard to convince your other partners to give up equal shares and sell it off, so that now you have 4 partners and you all own 25%. It's easier, and you probably, as somebody who knows that the partnership needs startup capital, you don't want to turn around and sell, half of your ownership or 20% of your ownership, because now you're a minority partner because you sold 20% and you only own 13 and somebody else owns 20%. So you don't want to create that situation. Corporations can be broken into shares right off the bat, and you can sell or break it up into as many pieces as you want, and the corporation can actually hold some of those shares. So even if you only have 4 people who want to have ownership of the corporation, you can authorize 10 shares of stock, give each of those 4 owners 1 share of stock. Now they each own 25% of that corporation. But when the corporation decides to sell those additional shares, issue those shares, it's going to take a vote of the shareholders to do that. But think about it. If you're a shareholder, number one, you don't want to see, if you're a 25% owner, you don't want to see all those additional shares hit the market. But at the same time, the sale from those additional shares is going to increase the value of the corporation a great deal. That's exactly what Facebook is looking at right now. If you own stock in Facebook, if you own shares of Facebook right now, it's worth a lot. And you don't want to see a bunch of new owners buying it on the stock exchange, flooding ownership of Facebook, because your ownership percentage is probably going to drop. But the overall value per share that you own is going to soar. It's going to soar, even though technically your share in the ownership has dropped, just because the demand and the feeding frenzy that's going to be out there for these shares is going to be, it's going to be nuts. It's just going to be crazy how much this company is going to be valued on the market when these shares hit the market. So And don't think I'm suggesting that you go out and invest in Facebook, because to be honest, it's probably going to be overvalued right off the bat, and you're going to see at some point the shares come back to reality. So I doubt anybody here is a shareholder of Facebook, but if you are, you may want to consider selling in the midst of this feeding frenzy. Anyway, you never know if somebody out there, one of you guys in class, is like a personal friend of Mark Zuckerberg or something, and you weaseled, a couple shares out of him back in like the 2004, 2005 time period. Anyway, moving on. So, what else we need to talk about in